Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher. No Adam Kaplan. Once again, I call in the best of pinch hitters like we did last week with Andrew. Now we've got former Eagle tight end and a friend of Inside the Birds. You've seen him with us before. You've heard him with us before. Clay Harbor. Clay is in the middle of doing his own personal training camp tour, just like Adam Kaplan is. And so we thought, hey, let's get Clay on. He was just with the Eagles. He's with some other teams. Want to hear your observations, Clay. We want to hear everything you saw. But the funny thing is, as soon as you get on a plane and leave, the very next day, the Eagles decide to play a little roster tango at some important positions.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And they brought in a guy that played at a place that I played at for 3 years as well. So that was cool to see. Miles Jack. We didn't cross paths, but I know a lot of guys that know him, and I've heard nothing but good things. Good guy, and I appreciate you guys bringing me to pinch hit, man. But when you're pinch hitting for a guy like Adam Kaplan, and that's tough. That's like pinch hitting for the cleanup hitter, man. How are you supposed to step in and take some good cuts, knowing that you're pinch hitting, for a guy of that caliber? But I'll try to do my best here.
Listen, the one thing we don't do on this program is Adam and I, some people will say our egos are big just based on how much, we talk about our sources and stuff. We don't blow each other up. So this is quite easy for you to step in for Adam Kaplan. I'll say it there. I don't think Adam will mind at all. But no, we wish Adam the best as he does his training camp tour. And look, there's no doubt we got more handsome with you on the set than Adam, though. So I say that because I know Adam's listening, and I really want to take a shot at him right now. So I'm going to say it right there.
I don't know if Adam's going to agree with that, but I appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. It's great to have you. And as we've talked about in the past, we are going to do some stuff together going forward as far as Inside the Birds and having you on our programming. We don't really announce things until they're official, and then we put it all out there. But I do want to tell our listeners and our viewers that we are excited to be doing some work with you going ahead this season, and hopefully starting an even longer term relationship with Inside the Birds there. So really excited to start working with you pretty soon.
No, man, I'm pumped pumped about it, man. I love the Eagles. I love my time in Philly, and I love what you guys do. I listen to your guys' show. I think it's a good fit, and I'm excited to bring my expertise to the squad here and help out in any way I can, and think that I can help out and bring a unique perspective on a lot of things from a player's perspective, tight end that's been around to a lot of different places, and have a unique look at a lot of different things. So I'm excited about it and looking forward to it.
Yeah, there are a couple of things we want to talk about tonight in this podcast where I get your feeling on, your viewpoint on as a former player, right? But then now there are a lot of things we're also going to talk about where you're using your just almost like your scouting eye, your analytical eye, yes, as a former player, but now as someone who's watching it from the sidelines and doing it a little bit differently as opposed to being in the middle of the action. So look forward to getting into that with you. Want to remind everybody, Inside the Birds is brought to you by and powered by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. They are the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. We had a flurry of recent signups to our Patreon channel. So our members, we really appreciate them hopping aboard. They're David D, David L, Mervin, Kirk, and Thomas. Welcome aboard. Enjoy the great content. I know people have been excited about our recent interviews with Chuck Pagano, who was very close to Sean Desai on the Chicago Bears staff. John DiFilippo, also former Eagles quarterbacks coach, former Chicago Bears staff. As you know, Clay, worked with the Bears and then worked with Sean Desai. Joe Banner we had on. Joe Banner was fascinating, just sort of talking about his experience being part of the 2004 Eagle. Well, he was with the Eagles for a while, but as you know, they went to the Super Bowl in 2004. What was it like in 2005 when you have to deal with the quote unquote the Super Bowl hangover from losing, right? And so he had a lot to say about that I thought was really interesting, because that's really what faces the Eagles this year, losing the Super Bowl, coming back, trying to run it back, and difficulties with that. So a lot to get through. If anybody wants to jump on, it's and for all these reasons, including our Adam Kaplan's weekly chat on Discord, we do a monthly live stream Q&A with our listeners, and we're going to be adding more programming and content to our Patreon channel. So that's why you're going to want to get in at patreon.com/inside the Birds to join up and become a big part of a growing fraternity of people who are very, very excited about the content that we're delivering them. Clay, you aren't just going to the Eagles. I know you've been at the Bears recently. You also make your, time in Chicago. How many teams are you going to be seeing this preseason? How many have you seen already? And do you plan to see any others?
Yeah, so I've seen obviously the Eagles and the Bears, and I am heading to Jacksonville next week to catch some Jaguars camp with who, Doug Peterson, former head coach of the Birds. So I'll be
That's
out
right.
there as well, and those will be the three teams that I'll be seeing. And I think there are three teams that are all three in some interesting positions. I think the Bears, obviously after the first pick, they've improved greatly. The Jaguars, I think, are actually a favorite this year after being last place in the AFC South for 2 years, came back and won it, and now they're a favorite. How can they play as a favorite? And obviously the Eagles, are they going to have that Super Bowl hangover? How are they going to react after losing that such a close game and being so close to the pinnacle of football and winning the Super Bowl? Can they get back there? So I've really got to see some cool things and looking forward to seeing some more of these teams.
So let me ask you this. I saw this on Twitter, and I'm guilty of sort of just seeing the tweet and not watching the video, but I'm not going to make any conclusions like some people do. I'll just simply ask you. You were on a show recently in Chicago, and I believe the topic came up where they asked you to compare seeing the Eagles versus seeing the Bears. Now,
Yeah.
anybody who follows football or these teams knows that it's not really a fair comparison because both teams are in different stages of their development. But how did you feel about what kind of answer did you give? And I'm just curious to know how you did compare them and what you said.
Yeah, that was actually on ESPN2 this
Oh,
morning,
my
man.
fault. I thought it was Chicago. My bad.
As my national debut, man. So it was pretty cool to be on ESPN after watching it so long growing up. It was an early morning show, but just being at both camps, they asked me compare, what you saw from Eagles camp to Bears camp, and for me, I'm excited what the Bears are doing. Being from Chicago, I grew up a Bears fan. Actually, never played for the Bears. So I'm like, how'd you end up doing so much work for the Bears and you've actually never played for them? From Chicago, I live here. I grew up a Bears fan. This is where I'm actually from. All my family lives here. The Bears have gotten better. I love what DJ Moore brings. Chase Claypool is playing bigger. He's playing better this year. Darnell Mooney, the wide receiver core, looks good.
Mhm.
Offensive line is still kind of patchwork. Darnell Wright, some ups and downs. He's a rookie. You expect that. Braxton Jones, left tackle, ups and downs again this year. He had an okay year last year for a rookie fifth rounder, actually, excuse me. And the rest of the offensive line, Kobe Whitehair is coming back from an up and down year. Tevin Jenkins, an up and coming left guard. They just signed Nate Davis. So the O-line is okay. The defense has improved greatly. They just signed Yannick Ngakoue. The rest of the D line, they just signed Andrew Billings. They got some new guys in there. Dominique Robinson is playing well. DeMarcus Walker, Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, a former Eagle, is actually playing some really good football. He's just got a nose for the football. And their defensive backfield's improved. And I say all that to say this team is getting better, but after going to Philadelphia and watching the Eagles, I mean, it's not even close. I'm like, okay, the Bears are better. Maybe they're not that far off. I go and I watch Eagles practice for a couple days, and I go, no, there's a different level. There's levels of this stuff. And as good as DJ Moore is, I go in there, I watch AJ Brown, I'm just in awe. DJ Moore is a top 20 receiver. I mean, this guy, top 15. He had 3 straight years of 1,100 plus yards. He basically has me or you throwing him the football. Right. He don't got nobody. Who's got throwing him the football over there? I mean, come on, he ain't got no quarterbacks over there. So this guy's a great receiver. I see AJ Brown. I go, it's not even close. Yeah. And then you add Devontae Smith in there. I still think Devontae is better than DJ Moore. I think it's a little bit closer. And then just seeing that the chemistry that AJ, Devontae, and Jalen have, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's like these guys have played together for years. They're looking for each other. There's so much trust there, and I'm just in awe. And then Dallas Goedert. I love Cole Kmet. Just got paid. Cole Kmet's a good player. Yeah. Dallas Goedert's much better. Yeah, I mean, it's not that close. And right. I'm just like, wow, man. Yeah, the Eagles, in my opinion, are just as good as they were last year. Kels, Lane Johnson still looking good. This offensive line, it just seems like they didn't miss a beat. Jordan Mailata might be the biggest human I've ever seen. He makes the dude from the blind side look small. I mean, in the D line, they just reloaded on the defensive line. Okay, they lost Hargraves. Let me see what these young guys are doing. And you start looking at some of these young guys. Fletch is looking good. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. We know Milton Williams is a good player that can get the job done too. That interior defense was one of the things I was worried about with Hargraves gone. I think they might be better. And
Wow.
then Brandon Graham, I don't know, he must have found the fountain of youth. This guy, we got drafted together, Geoff. I'm waking up with back pain for going on a jog. This guy's competing in training camp still. I'm
That's
talking
crazy.
to BG, what are you doing, man? You're still out here playing football? I couldn't imagine waking up and playing football still. And the guy is looking good. They're not killing him in camp. They're not giving him a ton of reps, but the reps they get, they are playing well. I mean, he's not flashing like crazy, but a guy like Nakobe Dean, I think he's going to be pretty, he's coming off the injury. I think he's going to do a good job. And, some of these young pass rushers, I think Nolan Smith, talking to Lane, talking to Kels, they like what he does, but he's just got to get stronger, and they think he has a spot on this team. So, a little long-winded answer, but the Bears are getting better, but the Eagles are still the class of the NFC. It's levels to this thing. The Bears aren't there yet. The Eagles are looking good. They're still looking top-notch.
Awesome. I will say, and it's certainly not apples to apples, and just because one team did it doesn't mean another team does it. The Eagles last year were a 9-8 team coming into training camp. It was Jalen Hurts' second year as starter. There were a lot of questions about his development. It's hard to imagine that now because of everything that went on last year. But they were in that boat as they're better than 9-8, but how good are they? And bam, they took a huge leap. So obviously the Bears will be one of those teams that I think people, especially with Justin Fields, expect to see market improvement. And you mentioned how they brought in a bunch of players, and we'll just see how that shakes out for them. I want to go through. You started to start listing names, and I'm like, no, Clay, hold on. We're gonna get to that.
Yeah, no, I got ahead of myself right there,
I know,
man.
that's okay. That's all right, because we gotta take care of some business first here. First, we gotta talk about what's coming up for the Eagles. They're playing Saturday night, the Ravens preseason opener in Baltimore. And I don't know if you've paid much attention to this. I don't even know what to make of it. The Ravens have won 23 straight preseason games. And normally, I know that's normally something we would make fun of because usually the offseason free agency champion, like the Jets, is not any good, but they at least they back it up, man. They're a great franchise.
Yeah, so there might be something to it.
Yeah, maybe
Harbaugh says he wants to teach his guys to win. And they typically, I mean, I don't know the statistics of how many straight winning seasons they've had, but I know they're up there. I don't remember the last time that you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens as a doormat team. They're always winning games, and there has to be something to that. It's how Harbaugh coaches. He plays to win you play to win the game. Hello, Herm Edwards. That's what he's doing, man. I'm okay with it as a player. Let's win. Let's go out there and win. I don't care if it's preseason. I know it doesn't count if you're doing something like keeping starters in too long. If you're doing something that puts your team at risk, that's when it starts to take away from, hey, this is a preseason game. But, so far so good for Harbs, man. He's doing a good job in the regular season, so let's keep it going.
Yeah, I think it shows, Clay, that there's no one. I think that sometimes we get locked into you must be this, you must be that, because certain trends do well, right? And when we've talked about the Eagles, Adam and I, and most followers, right, we're pretty much aghast sometimes, to use that word, about how little they're doing in the preseason, how little they do, how little their practice time, days off. Nobody plays during the preseason if they're a starter, right? And what are we going to criticize, though? They went to the Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni's 2 for 2 for player. It works, but also it doesn't mean it's the be all to end all, because as you mentioned, Harbaugh, and then there's Mike Tomlin, he'll be playing Kenny Pickett in the open. He plays his players in the preseason, and that dude has never had a losing season. Even when last year it looked like they were gonna tailspin, they still didn't finish with a losing season. So that works for them.
Yeah. There's different ways. Yeah. I don't know. I've never skinned a cat. I don't know why there's different ways to skin a cat. I don't even know if that's a real thing, but I'll just say the saying, I guess there's different ways to skin a cat.
There is
Okay.
different ways. It works for
Yeah.
when it works for one doesn't always work for the other, but if it works for you, it works for you. And I don't know,
Yeah.
what was your feeling watching, like, you were drafted by Andy Reid. You went to Lehigh. You
Yes.
experienced what these
Yeah.
players now, it's like it would be like a campfire nightmare story for them if they had to hear what you went through, right? Like, "Oh my
Oh my
god, what?
goodness.
What? Yes, we went 3 times in one day,"
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
pads every day. So what was it like just to watch an Eagles training camp practice?
Oh my god, Jeff, it was alumni day, so I got to catch up with a bunch of my old teammates, and I'm sitting there with Moise Foku and Trent Cole, and we're just like, dude, this is the quickest. It was like this is like warm up period. And Coach Reed back at the 2-a-days, we had two tech. I sound like a grandpa telling war stories. Back in my day, we used
Yeah,
to play, all day long. But
yeah.
we had no days off, 20 plus days, 2-a-days, full practices, live periods to the ground.
Mhm.
They're practicing for an hour and 10 minutes and they're off the field. I don't know how a young guy is supposed to make a team like this first with all these reps. You're not getting that many reps. Maybe it helps for keeping these guys fresh, but me, Trent, and Moses were just like, dude, this is crazy. Trent's like, dude, I'd still be playing if training camp was like this. And
Yeah.
it was wild to see just the difference. And I remember, my second, third year when they had the uncapped year, they had, they changed it to where
Mhm.
the collective bargaining agreement said, hey, now we're going to have some rules. Coach Reed used to run some hellacious camps. I remember calling my brother and my mom, like, hey, guys, I know I just got drafted, but I don't know if this is for me. We're all just me and the old guys. Well, everybody had that same conversation.
Yeah.
Trent's talking to Ike Reese. Ike is like, hey man, we had that same conversation.
Yeah, man.
Back in the day, they were at Westchester, I think, and we were at Lehigh, and just complete difference. But go back to that saying again. There's different ways of skin a cat. You can't argue with results. But
Yeah.
me, I liked going to Lehigh and knowing, this is going to be this is some mental toughness we're building right here that's going to get us through the season, get through this training camp, and the rest is downhill.
Mhm.
But, there's different ways to do things now. There's more rules in place and allows a lot of these veteran guys to play longer. So I like the change. I just wish it would have happened, maybe a bit sooner, when I would have enjoyed it a little more.
I bet, I'm sure. I used to call that time period you guys would have between the first practice and the second practice, which was usually like the special teams one, right?
Yeah.
Which you were a part of a lot. So I used to
Yeah.
call that time period in between like the soul searching period because a lot of guys would
Oh,
walk off the
brutal.
field after that morning practice and wonder if they were going to be back out there for that. And like there would be the phones, like they're on the phone with their agent or their mom or their dad, like, get me out of here. I'm done. I can't do it.
Yeah, those are some crazy days, man. I made those calls, and I'm not too ashamed to say that I was talking to my family like, "Yo, I don't know if I should have signed up for this, man. It isn't all it's cracked up to be out here."
Yeah, definitely,
Different
definitely.
times.
So,
Yeah,
about the preseason opener that's coming up Saturday, I'm just one as a
yeah.
player, right? What was your mentality playing in the preseason opener besides don't get hurt?
I had a bunch of different situations, right?
Mhm.
When you're a young guy, you're just trying to make a team. Like my first 2 years with the Eagles, I'm out there, I'm gonna play, I'm trying to make a team. My third year, I was kind of like, a guy that was on the team, and then I go to Jacksonville and I sign a 2-3 year deal, and I know I'm a guy that's on the team. Then I go to New England. I'm fighting to make a roster again. So it's just like this different mentality for different players. If
Mhm.
you're a guy that knows he's on the team, that you're a starter, you're kind of really, you don't want to play that much. You want to go out and maybe get a couple reps, just clean up anything, just get used to seeing the speed of the game, get used to me as a tight end, to diagnosing coverages, to diagnosing these blitz with the lights on, just get used to playing with that mentally, used to hearing the call, you're in the game again, you're in the stadium, just get used to everything. If you're a guy that's fighting for a spot, this is your Super Bowl. Like people, like the fans go out there and they watch it like, it's just pretty, doesn't matter. To those guys that are fighting for a spot, you are putting on for every other team in the league. You think to yourself, you go, hey, if it doesn't work out here, I got to play well here because this is me fighting for my future.
Mhm.
If I don't make this team, there's 31 other teams that are going to watch this tape and say, hey, this Harbor kid can play. So for me, when I was fighting for those spots, you make sure to go every rep matters to the end. It's end of the game. There's people leaving, but you are still playing hard because you know that I and this guy don't lie. The tape is on. You are fighting for your NFL future.
Hmm.
So there's going to be a lot of that going on. Like a guy like Brandon Graham, probably not going to suit up. You got a guy like, say, Jalen Carter. He knows he's on the team. He's excited. He's a rookie. He's going out there. He wants to get the experience. Then say you get a guy like Terrell Edmonds, who's a guy
Hmm.
that's going to make the roster, but he go out there, maybe see what he sees, get ready for the game. And then you got a guy like Zacchaeus who hasn't done that much, who really, maybe wants to show that, hey, I'm cementing myself on this team. I'm going to make some plays. Maybe camp hasn't been excellent for me, but I'm a gamer and I'm going to show them why they signed me this offseason. So every guy has a different mentality going into this game.
Right, right. No, and I think you made the best point of all is that, and I think players are really conscious of this, is that they know that there's 31 other teams that are going to be watching that tape because a lot of guys who do get waived or released wind up getting picked up a day to maybe even a week later or some point during the season because of the tape that existed from preseason games. And that'll piggyback to our next point. The joint practices have really become for teams the replacement for the preseason games because the Eagles very rarely play starters in the preseason games, but they are obviously putting their first teams out there in these joint practices, and that's where the competition gets really hot and heavy. And of course,
Oh yeah.
teams bring their pro scouts, like everybody's getting evaluated. How
Yeah.
much of those has that like become more the marquee event of the preseason than the actual games?
Oh, it's fun, man. If you're traveling, you travel with your team. You're there. You're sick of playing against your own guys, and now there's a new enemy.
Yes.
Usually it's offense versus defense. It's you versus them, and now you get to come together as a team. You get to cheer your guys on now, which is a good change of pace. And you guys all realize, hey, we're on the same team. Instead of beating up on our own guys, now we are playing against another team. And then you want to get a feel for where you are as a
Hmm.
team. You get to see how are we doing against another team in this league. And like I said, as the young guys, you're taking this as an opportunity. Hey, they're watching this tape too. Their coaches are going to be watching this film. And if I get a chance to flash and say, hey, if I don't make this team, I can make that team. And it's a good way to kind of see where you're at as a team and as players. And then it shows the coaches, okay, how do these guys react against a different system? Say
Right.
instead of going against a 4-3 defense, now you're going against a 3-4. It's maybe a little more confusing, a team that blitzes a little more. Just gives you another feel. Can these guys pick up different plays? Can they look at play against different systems instead of just playing against your own guys the whole time? So I love the practices against other teams. I remember back in Philly in my day, we played against the Patriots a couple times and
Mm.
then the Browns. So those were always fun practices to play against some of these teams. And then you got guys that you always go and talk trash to them, and those it's always fun to see those guys too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think the one that, if I can remember, yours was, were the Patriots at our place or were we
They were
there?
at Philly. Yeah, they came into Philly.
I know there was one because there were a couple that they've done a couple we there and here, and there's one that Adam and I reflect on where Tom Brady literally came in and the ball never hit the ground, not even one time in 7-on-7s or
Yeah.
11-on-11s, and it was the most amazing thing we'd ever seen in our life. But yeah, you wouldn't see that because you were on the other fields with your quarterback and stuff. So no, that
I
was.
went through a training camp with Tom
Oh,
Brady
that's
though.
right, you
I
do. Yeah,
signed I
yeah.
signed with New England. I was there the whole off season. Only lasted 5 games before I got released with the Patriots in the regular season
Uh huh.
that year. But yeah, that whole off season, man, Tom and those guys. I mean, the level of preparation that he has is incredible. He's a guy that's 17 years in. He's still sitting in the front row taking.
Hmm.
What are you taking notes on? Are you really taking notes? Are you drawing stick figures? You've been in the same offense for 17 years, man. And
Yeah.
that's the same type of guy. Obviously, he's young, but Jalen Hurts. That's what people say. He's got that same type of mentality and work ethic. And just guys like that, playing with Drew Brees, just these guys are meticulous. They're just so focused. And I think that's where, I'm not going to say he's going to be Tom Brady, but I think that's where Jalen Hurts is heading as a guy that's just one of those greats of all time guys.
Gotcha. That's great. That's big praise. Let's talk before we get sort of breaking down what you saw. Obviously, I'll get through the injuries real quick. Deion Kane has been out for quite a bit with an ankle. He remains out. Patrick Johnson, the outside linebacker slash edge rusher, he left the field last week. Were you there when he left the field with the ankle injury?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
has not yet returned to practice, so he's still out. Nakobe Dean, I think you were probably there when Nakobe Dean limped off the field as
yeah.
well. He just returned on Wednesday in a limited form, so probably pretty soon he'll get back into the action. I don't. I'd be surprised if he played in the preseason opener unless he was 100%.
Yeah.
James Bradbury has been back. He was nursing a groin injury. Wide receiver slash kick returner Devin Allen. He was activated the last few days off of NFI. Clay, he was injured his calf before the preseason started. He's also a guy. I don't know if you're familiar with this story. He's an Olympic hurdler,
Yeah.
and he's been training to do that while he's also trying to make the Eagles, which has to be one of the most difficult things you can ever do.
Yeah.
But I listen, when you have a chance to be an Olympian, I get why you would do it. But I wanted you to speak on calf injuries because he's obviously a receiver known for speed, but he was dealing with a calf injury, and I don't know if you've ever dealt with them throughout your career, but I do. I've heard, but from tons of guys who've had them and coaches that these things can linger and they get re-aggravated pretty easily. Is that something that you're familiar with?
You're talking to the right guy because I had a, you hear the term strained calf, right? And you think, oh, this is not. I had a strained calf for like 7, 8. I missed all of preseason one year, all of training camp one year in Jacksonville, and then even when we came to Philly and we played the Eagles, and I couldn't even play in that game. I was out for 3 games, all of training camp, 3 games in the regular season, came back, and I still wasn't 100% from a strained calf. It is really an awful injury. There's not much you can do with it. You get the PRP injections, you can get the
Hmm.
stem cells, did everything, but there's really not much you can do but just, rest and just get some stem and ice on it, man. And it's a lingering injury. And what a strain is, it's basically a tear, but
Right,
they call it a strain because it's not as bad of a grade. So
right.
this is a torn calf. If you have a strained calf, it's a tough injury, man. It's not quite the Achilles, obviously, but it's not good. And it's something that can linger and will take a while. I experienced it. I missed 7 to 8 weeks with the strained calf in 2014. And it's a tough injury. And it doesn't really go away right away. You'll still, like you said, you could still re-injure it. And it's
Hmm.
something I had to wear a sleeve on my calf for the rest of the season. It's something that you really think about, man. People think a strained calf, but it really is a bad injury to have, especially for a guy that plays an explosive position like wide receiver or tight end. So, I
Sure.
hope he can, figure that out. But it's not easy, man. Take it from me.
By the way, that game you were referring to, Jacksonville at Philadelphia, I want to say
Yep.
that Jacksonville was doing pretty well, maybe winning that game at point until Darren
Yeah,
Sproles, I
they
think,
scored
ripped off
first. Yeah.
a huge
Yeah.
touchdown up the middle in the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was pretty hyped for my squad. I'm like, man, I really wanted, because that was the year after, Chip Kelly had released me and I got signed by Jacksonville. And the next season, I signed a deal with Jacksonville to come back, and I circled that game. It was like the first or second game of the season in Philly. I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. You always want to play against your own team, old team, the coach that released you. And I tore my calf, or strained it, in training camp and couldn't make it. But they did make the game exciting, but the Eagles pulled away late.
Yeah, if I recall, it was a Darren Sproles big touchdown run that put the Eagles ahead in that
That has a
game.
crazy memory, man. That's
Oh
pretty
man, it's
impressive.
weird. I got weird total recall of some things
That's good stuff.
going on 20 years of
Wow.
this.
That's
uh,
impressive.
so we'll have to watch Devin Allen and see, what he's able to do as he kind
Yeah.
of ramps up more and gets more involved. Josh Sills is back with the team. I don't know if you were familiar with his legal situation. He was cleared,
Yeah.
acquitted on
Yeah.
two felony charges, so he's back on the roster, back at practice. Because of the extra offensive lineman, him and they brought in Josh Andrews, who I don't think you were a teammate of the. I think he came in during the Chip Kelly era, so he might have come
Yeah.
in right
But
after.
afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, he's
I
back
was
with the team.
teammates with DK. He's a guy that I played with, but
Which
not him.
DK?
No.
Metcalf. No,
Um,
no, no, not
me-
DK. What am I talking
no,
about?
no, the offensive lineman they just signed, Dennis Kelly.
Oh,
We
Dennis
call
Kelly,
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
course.
Dennis
Yes.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, DK. We called him
Yeah.
DK back
I
in the
was
day
like, who,
before.
I think I couldn't figure it out. That's right.
Yeah,
So they
yeah,
released to make room for Sills and Andrews, they released these offensive tackles, Cheem Okorafor and Trevor Reed. So
yeah. Okay.
those are their moves that they've made. And we will get into the roster and what you saw in a second. I want to remind everybody it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes, so be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. All right, so let's talk about what you saw, Clay. I mean, you were there for 2 days, and it's kind of funny because anybody else from the media, right, who came earlier in camp who wanted to come for 2 days would have basically wasted a day because the Eagles weren't even practicing on back-to-back days until you got there. So they kind of reminded me of when me and Adam went to Miami last year for the joint practices, and the second practice got banged because the Dolphins had a outbreak of some stomach virus. So literally the second day of joint practices was just the Eagles practicing at the Dolphins facility.
Well, hey, at least you're in Miami, man. You go out, get
In the
to
middle
hit
of
the beach,
August.
maybe.
I love
Oh
Miami, but in the
yeah,
middle of
that's
August,
humid.
yeah.
It's a little humid. Yeah,
It was
yeah,
humid and
yeah.
boiling hot at the same
Oh,
time.
it's brutal. Brutal camp. Brutal
Yeah.
camp.
So
Yeah.
you told me what you saw about on the quarterbacks. Just in general.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about offensively. A
Yeah.
lot of firepower, but they have a new play caller in Brian Johnson. What stood out to you without naming an individual, but just offensively about anything that jumped out at you?
The one thing that jumped out at me, the first thing that I saw was that these guys take this stuff serious.
Mm,
There's not a lot, sometimes you're on a team, maybe the guys, you got some big time superstars, maybe some guys are laughing and joking around. These guys are out there for business. They are out there to work, and they are out there to get their job done. And you could feel that, you could sense it, that they're not practicing long, but these guys are getting their work done. And obviously that all stems down from the quarterback. I mean, you saw
mm-hmm.
him, he's out there for business, to get better, to get ready for the season. These guys are there to win. And you could feel that. You could sense that. I've been on a lot of different teams. Like I said, I went through an entire training camp with the New England Patriots. I've been through several with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the type of team like the Patriots. You go out on that field. You're not like you're fun. You love your friends in the locker room, but when you're on that field, you're business. You're going out there to get better. You're going out there to do your job, and that was the overall sense that I got from Eagles practice.
No, that's really interesting. And I'm wondering if Nick Sirianni also played. Like, did you sort of watch his coaching style? He's kind of known for, he's known in front of the camera as being, I'm just gonna talk and talk, blah, blah, right? And he kind of comes off as goofy, but you watch him on the practice field, and he's like very intense and often in guys' faces, coaches and players. Did you see any of that?
Yeah, you do. And you could tell he's a serious guy. And, I got that same feeling that you did, like watching the pre-practice press conference and hear him talk. It's like, man, yeah, the guy he's a nice guy, really humble. But on the field, I mean, he's serious. He's there to do a job. He's there to win games. And that's what I think it all starts with him. Then it goes to the quarterback and it trickles down to the rest of this roster. And that's why I love this team is these guys, as long as you got these two guys leading the way, they're going to have that mentality, and I think this team will be successful because of that. Similar to what you saw in New England. It started with Bill Belichick, obviously trickled down to his generals. You had Josh McDaniels back then. My tight end coach was Brian Dable. Obviously defensive coordinator. You had Patricia. It trickled down to them, then it trickled to Tom. And that was why everybody knew we're going out there to practice. We are approaching this like it's a game. This is not a game. This is not practice. This is a game, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We are practicing like we're playing a football game on Sunday right now. So when we get to Sunday, we've done this all before. And to us, it's just the repetition, just doing it all over again. And it's at the same tempo, the same intensity, and treating it like that,
Mm-hmm.
treating it like that game atmosphere. And that's why New England was so successful. And you see that same stuff happening in Philadelphia.
As a pass catcher by nature, what were you looking at when you were watching the offense and specifically Jalen Hurts?
Timing and just seeing it's Justin Fields. Just like to go back to him just because I've been watching so much Bears lately. I think he's taken strides. The difference in Jalen Hurts is his anticipatory throws. I don't even know if
Mm.
that's a word, but he's
Yes.
anticipating his throws so well. AJ Brown isn't out of his break, and the ball's in the air. And that's how you know a guy has chemistry. When he is throwing the deep outs, the deep ins, the comebacks, when he's not out of his break and the ball is in the air, that's when you know, okay, these two guys got trust and they are on the same page. And you see that with Jalen and AJ, and you see that with Jalen and Devontae. So,
Hmm.
I mean, these guys are on the same page, and you could tell they put in so much work. There's not chirping. They're not coming back, dapping each other up. Hey, man, no. They go back to the huddle, a big play. And that's the thing I noticed. You said not to name names, but AJ Brown, dude, is all business. A lot of times you got these receivers, they're going out there, they're acting like they're. This guy is playing like it's a game. He is going out there to make plays. He's not laughing. He's not joking. He is business. And
Hmm.
that's why I really enjoyed watching him and Hurts go to work. It
Right.
was just business.
One thing I've been wondering is now because we've seen this serious tone set by Jalen Hurts and the offense. I mean, I think that the Eagles are fortunate. Well, I don't want to say fortunate because I think it's part of their evaluation process. So intentional also that AJ Brown, Devontae Smith are probably two of the most laser focused receivers. Like they don't have diva characteristics, traits about
Yes.
them. They're not screaming if the ball doesn't go their way. They're not acting goofy. But
Yeah.
even some really good guys in this league who are known for being good guys, but maybe a little bit
Yeah.
goofy, like Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm just going to bring that name up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Juju. I think he's a good quality possession receiver, but he's kind of known for also, and Christian Kirk too, right? Making like locker room TikToks and things. I wonder if when guys come here, they would immediately just stop that, like because that's not the tone that is set by the Eagles.
That is Jalen Hurts. I mean, this guy, he doesn't care about anything but football. You got quarterbacks. You'll see them out. They go out, they party, they do this, they want to be this. Jalen Hurts wants to be a quarterback. He wants to play football, and he wants to be good at football and win football games and win Super Bowls. That
Right.
is his priority 1, 2, and 3. If you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. Okay, because you're not focused, and that will come from Jalen Hurts. That is what he does. Talking to the veteran guys, you're talking to Kelsey, talking to Lane, Fletch after practice. I'm asking them these questions. They have nothing but like, hey, these are just buddies to buddies. Like
Hmm.
this guy is incredible. He's just all business, great player, great locker room guy, the guy you want to lead your team, and that trickles down. Your receivers aren't going to be, approaching practice like it's some joke. Hey, it's practice. No, this is an extension of the game because it starts with him. It starts with Hurts and goes down to these receivers, and you can sense that.
Right. So let me ask you, how as we finish off quarterbacks here, how difficult do you think the Eagles' practice structure of not really having long practices, having a lot of breaks in between, how difficult do you think that might be for a guy like Marcus Mariota, who comes in, didn't have a very good season last year, had a lot of stuff going on, is trying to work with new teammates, new coaches, new schemes, everything. I mean, the only thing familiar to him is Olamide Zaccheaus, right? Um, do you think that maybe he's one of those guys that probably wishes that the format might be a little bit different for his own personal benefit?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, these are veteran guys. They've been there. Dallas Goedert, obviously, talk about Kelsey. You
Hmm.
talk about Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Mailata. These guys don't need a ton of reps. They've been there. They've done it. They're in the same offense. But when you do get to a guy like Marcus Mariota, guys that are coming onto this new offense and young guys, you need reps, man. I mean, football is a game of repetition, and it takes a while to figure this thing out. With Mariota, yeah, 100%. I think the more reps you get in an offense, the more comfortable you get. And quarterback is obviously the most difficult position to play in sports. And it's tough when you don't get those reps. So I'm thinking he's going to see an extended amount of time, obviously, in preseason before you go to Book, before you go to Tanner McKee. You want to keep him in there, Marcus Mariota, just so we can get used to this offense.
What did you think, like watching Marcus?
I heard he was struggling during camp, but when I saw him, he looked pretty good. I
Okay.
think he had a couple decent days. He had some good throws. He was late on some stuff, but he did make some big runs too. And obviously in camp, you're going, oh, did they not take? No, he didn't get touched. Those were actual legit runs, and he's a dual
Hmm.
threat guy. So when I saw he looked pretty good, and obviously he's not playing with the number one receivers. I think it's a different ball game if he's out there throwing to AJ Brown, Devontae Smith too. So with the guys he was throwing to, I thought he did a good job.
All right, running backs. What did you so the big topic around the Eagles is the stockpile of talent they have with Rashad Penny, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell comes back. Boston Scott's played a small but I would say significant role at times. And then Trey Sermon, who the coaches just keep talking about how much they love him when they only gave him 2 carries last year. So
Yeah.
I'll ask you this. Is there anything that jumped out from not just a individual standpoint, but a usage standpoint? Like what did you see when you see these guys going in and out?
I think it was I saw a little bit more Swift because it's camp and it's tough to see running backs when you're not
Right. It's
tackling, you're not
passing
playing
camp.
live periods. Passing camp, and Swift can catch the football. He does a great job of catching it out the backfield, and I think he's going to be a weapon. You get to see what he can do in the passing game, and what I saw was a guy with natural hands. Some running backs have them, some running backs don't. Like Miles Sanders could catch the ball, but to me, he didn't have natural smooth hands
Right.
like a guy like Swift has. So you saw that Penny, I think, is gonna pop once you get on the pads. Once you start tackling, the guy can break tackles. He obviously averaged almost 6 yards a carry every time when he's healthy. He only played half of the game since he's been in the league. But when he's healthy, the guy can play, and the guy like Gainwell can catch the ball too out of the backfield well. So I think you see more in these camps from the guys that catch the ball in the backfield than you do the guys that can run the ball. Once you get into the season, these guys that can really run the ball strong and downhill will start to pop more. So I did see Swift pop more than anyone else, but I do want to say I think Penny will be really good once you start tackling.
Do you sense that throwing the ball to the running back, which was not really part of the game plan last year? Most screens went
Yeah.
to Goddard. There was an occasional dump off, but like, and listen, it's hard to argue with the 30 points per game the Eagles putting up, but you always got to evolve, right? Do you feel like did you see a more concerted effort to get running backs involved, whether it's routes or just screens, anything that of that regard?
Well, yeah, I think you got to play to your player's strengths. When you got a guy like Swift, I mean, you definitely want to throw the ball to the back a little bit more because he's so good at doing that, at catching the
Yeah.
ball out of the backfield. I think he's a better pure receiver than Miles Sanders was last year. Miles Sanders was a big, athletic, strong guy, but more of a runner. And a guy like Swift, when he's in the game, can do a lot of different things, more things than Sanders could.
Let's talk about the receivers for a second. You've already talked about AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. They have a lot of tight ends competing there. How did you feel about, or just what did you observe about sort of 11 first personnel versus 12 personnel while you were there and what they were
Yeah,
doing?
no. So hearing everybody talk, everybody says Quez was having, a great camp, and he
Mhm.
did make some nice plays out there. And Zacchaeus wasn't really. I liked what I saw from Zacchaeus. I said I didn't know who the guy was. I remember I was sitting there with Ruben Frank. I go, yo, who's that? He goes, yo, that's Zacchaeus, a new guy. The guy, I go, I like this guy. The guy was
Mhm.
making some plays. So I think Zacchaeus, once the pads come on and the lights come on and the preseason games will show why he was, a free agent target that they had. And, obviously Quez has kind of run away with that position in camp, but I think preseason will have something to do with that. And I think there will be a little bit more of a split in reps between both those guys. Obviously, Devonta and AJ looked as good as ever, man. I mean, the guy's routes were just crisp, were solid. He looked big, fast, strong. Devontae Smith, same. He looked great. He's catching the ball smooth. He's fast. He's quick. Those two guys are those two guys. I think Quez and Zacchaeus are the next two guys there. And then it's an open ball game. I mean, Britton Covey's made the roster last year. He didn't do much. I mean, he was okay at, punt and kick returning, but I really like this Nada guy. He's big dude, Joseph Nada. I mean, he kind
Yeah.
of popped. I don't know much about him, but just watching him for those couple of days, he's a big guy that can run. Seems like he can catch. Wouldn't be surprised if he's maybe a late addition, fifth, sixth receiver on a roster. But I think those receivers are the main guys: the Devontae, AJ, Zacchaeus, and Quez.
Yes, Joseph, and you made the same mistake we made earlier on. It's actually Ngata. right?
And gotta,
Ngata, yeah.
yeah.
By
Yeah.
the way, we called him Joseph Nada about 1,000 times too. He was all Haloti Nada, Joseph Nada.
Yeah.
Not gonna
Yeah.
pronounce his name right now, but yeah, no, he's got size, Clay, and that's the one thing
Yeah.
that I swear. I mean, you played with the Eagles for a long time, so you realize how weird this is for us to see the Eagles have receivers with really good size, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Devontae Smith doesn't have size, but he's a technician. But
No.
still, like we were used to like the Deshaun's, the
Yeah.
Jeremys, right? The Kevin
Yeah.
Curtis. I mean, to see
Yeah.
guys like Ngata or even AJ Brown, who's built like a refrigerator. I mean, he's so strong, right? Up
Yeah.
top, it was culture shock for Eagles reporters. And honestly, they haven't had a group this talented of pass catchers, maybe ever. Like this diverse. I think Macklin and Jackson were great, and obviously Andy Reid was the mastermind of that offense. But when you're
Yeah.
talking about the ability to run every route, catch every ball, make yards after contact, Deshaun can
Yeah.
make yards after catch, but
Yeah.
after contact, this group is
Yeah.
about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, I was so impressed with what those guys do, and just to say it again, so impressed. The number one thing is just looking at how business like these receivers work. Typically,
Mhm.
receivers aren't those guys. The receivers are kind of the pretty boys. They have fun, they laugh, they joke around. These guys came in and were just working, running routes, working, coming back to the huddle, not saying anything. I go,
Yeah.
man, I love to see that because you know how serious these guys take it. And I think you also asked about the tight end situation. I think Goddard looks as good as he has in the past. I always, every time somebody asks me about my tight end rankings, I think it's obviously Kelsey, Kittle, and then I think Goddard Andrews are right there. He is that good. He's a guy I think can have 1,000-yard season this year, and I heard he wanted to do that. And obviously, Geoff, he's a Missouri Valley Conference tight end. When I saw him on the field, I talked to him about South Dakota State, how he had such a terrible field. I go, man, how'd you play there? When he was playing there, they had got turf. South Dakota State guy at Missouri State. We'd always travel. We'd play against each other. So I had to
Sure.
talk a little trash to
Uh-huh.
my man Dallas Goddard, and he broke all my tight end records from the Missouri Valley. I had to give him a hard time about that too. I don't
Oh,
know. He
that's
didn't leave
rough.
one for me. Took them
My
all.
God, he had to break your college conference records and then come to the same damn franchise that you were
And be
drafted
a
on
Pro
and do
Bowl.
that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
Be a Pro Bowl tight end. But I
Wow.
love this tight end unit we have because I told you I love Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold looked good, but the guy that really impressed me was Grant Calcaterra. I didn't know much about him. I didn't see him much in the blocking game.
Mhm.
But in the receiving game, this guy runs some crisp routes. He runs like a deer. He catches the ball smooth. I think in some 12 personnel, they're going to have a couple different 12 personnels, right?
Mhm.
Goddard's the guy that's going to stay on the field. Jack Stoll in the blocking situations is going to be on the field. Then you're going to get some of the move stuff, the fullback stuff. You'll get some Dan Arnold in there. And then when you want to do a throwing situation, you're going to get Calcaterra. I think they might keep 4 tight ends. I mean, I don't know who the odd man out is here. I know Jack Stoll, they love him for his blocking. I didn't really see much blocking going on from him. I think that he's behind Arnold in Calcaterra as far as receiving,
Mhm.
but Stoll is ahead of them for blocking. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think maybe they keep 4. If not, maybe my man Dan Arnold. I told you I love my guy Dan Arnold because he can do a lot of different things, but maybe he's odd man out.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know if they're going to keep 4. That would be, especially if they think they can get, because we didn't even really talk about Tyree Jackson,
Oh
who's
yeah,
a 6'7" monster. I think if they feel like they can get a couple of guys through waivers, and no offense to your position, but normally you can get tight ends through waivers and not
yeah,
afraid that you're going to lose them. Um,
yeah,
that might, because they're going to need to go pretty like when we start talking about defense, Clay,
yeah,
linebacker, safety, corner, they're going to have to keep some numbers.
yeah,
And that's going to make it
yeah.
tough to go high at tight end, especially when you have Goddard and Stoll. I mean, it's not like you've got a glaring need to get more numbers at that position.
So you think you think the odd man out would probably be Arnold at this point, huh?
Well, I think there's only going to be one of those 3. I think they'll keep 3. I don't think they'll keep
Yeah,
4. And I
yeah,
think it's basically between, yes, Calcaterra, Arnold, and Tyree Jackson. And then it comes down to, as you know, who's going to help them the most on special teams,
special teams.
who can do the most. And that's what sort of makes it a fascinating conversation, because Calcaterra gives you something that Tyree Jackson doesn't give you, but Tyree Jackson gives you something that Calcaterra and Dan Arnold don't give you, right? They all kind of bring a little bit extra to the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
I mean, it's really hard to compare Calcaterra, right? A pass catching F
Yeah.
tight end to a
Yeah.
6'7", 260-pound target. Well, I don't want to call him a target monster, but just a monster on
Yeah.
Tyree Jackson who can help you in the red zone, probably short yard,
Yeah.
and do all those other types of things.
Yeah,
So we'll
for
see.
sure.
That's one of those things, Clay, where it's not a cliche when we say we're really going to see the preseason and the joint practices
Yeah.
and how that shakes out. But that was good
Yeah,
intel.
that's
I
a
mean, I'm glad you
battle.
like, showing me, telling me what you saw there. It is going to be a very good battle.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
there was something else tight end related I wanted to. Oh, you mentioned because all of a sudden this thought came to me, right? And this might be another total recall situation. You were in training camp with the Eagles for Chip Kelly's first camp, right?
Yeah, I was with the entire training camp.
Right,
That was the last cut of 2013. The next day I signed with the Jaguars.
right.
I was at wide receiver at that time though, but I end up signing with the Jaguars in the first play of the season with the Jaguars. I catch a 15-yard pass against the
Mhm.
Kansas City Chiefs. I look to the sideline, I see Big Red, I see Tom Melvin, Marty Mornaway, all these. I go, damn man, life
Yeah,
happens fast.
yeah,
Life
right. You're
life
both
happens
in
fast.
different locations. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
both of us in different locations. I just caught a pass against these guys. I almost ran to the wrong sideline when I saw Big Red out there.
Oh, that's funny. I only bring it up because I distinctly remember Chip in his first preseason game putting out a 14 package. Um, would
Yeah,
that be one run? I
yeah,
think he had four tight ends on the field in a spread 2-by-2
yeah.
formation, right?
Stacked formation. Yeah, I
Yes.
remember that.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was me. It was me, Selleck, Ertz, and James Casey, and
Yep.
we're all out there in a 14 package. They expect us to pack it in, to be some blocking formation. But yeah, Chip had us all out wide in a 14 formation. You know how he was always trying to push the envelope at a bunch of different formations and stuff.
Yeah, and I'd have to go check. You might have caught the ball on that one. So
No,
kind of
I
funny
didn't
that.
catch the ball on
No,
that one.
wasn't you?
No,
All right, I
no,
thought it was
no,
you. I'm just impressed that
no.
I was able to remember that. But the point is,
That is impressive.
I don't see the Eagles keeping four tight ends. That's what circled me back to that memory of the four tight end formation that Chip Kelly
Yeah.
threw out there. All right, we'll finish off offense with the offensive line in a second. First, I want to pause real quick for a word from some of our great sponsors. All right. Hey, you had to do some blocking as a tight end, right? So you can at
Yeah.
least take a look at the offensive line. And you've already said when you have Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, mountain of a man there. And by the way, even more of a mountain of a man right next to him in Landon Dickerson. It's a really big offensive line. Obviously, but from being there and from your work here that they're auditioning a new right guard in Cam Jurgens, who was really a center for 2 years at Nebraska
Yeah.
after being a tight end, your position, for 2 years. So he's
Oh
pretty
wow.
raw to this position.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the offensive line's in a great situation. I mean, this guy's playing in between Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson, man.
Right.
I could probably go out there and do a decent job in between those two guys. I mean, you're literally in between two of the best to ever do it, man.
Pretty
I'm
good,
not
yeah.
I'm not even hyping that up. Those guys are literally two of the best to ever do it, in my opinion. And maybe I'm a little biased, but I think so. And they're two smart guys that talk. You know who's a great offensive tackle? Was Jason Peters. You know who didn't say a damn word? Excuse my language. Didn't say a word when you're trying to make a call? Jason Peters. I'm a young time. What's the call, man? Like, what are we double teaming this guy? JP, I know you know what you're doing, JP, but like, just let's say it, just so I know what I'm doing. So he's got some guys that he's in between that are going to make sure that he's in the right spot and he's doing everything right. So I'm not worried about him. He looked good. He's a big, strong guy. And I honestly think if I was playing between those two guys, man, I wouldn't even do that bad of a job. That has to be a good place to be. Got to feel real comfortable looking to your left and your right and seeing Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey. But he looked
But there's
good.
also
Talking to,
Clay, to that, not to interrupt you, but there's also
yeah, yeah,
has to be a sense of accountability on Cam Jurgens' part where like, yeah, these guys can
yeah,
help me, but I also can't screw it up for
yeah,
them like either, like it's
yeah.
twists and stunts and communication. Like I have to be on my total P's and Q's there.
Yeah, that's one thing. That's another thing I'll say about being at Bears camp, man. I write in my notes today about camp from Bears camp. Stunts, twists, got them a lot last year, and this year I go, man, they really got to fix that, because the D line for the first real time started doing a lot of twists and stuff in games. And I go, man, they are getting wrecked by these games again. Obviously they're not sacking the quarterback, but I'm like, that would have been a sack, or that
Mhm.
that would have been a hit, that have been a hurry. And the Eagles, seeing those guys, I mean, those guys are great at doing that. They're
Right.
great at passing those off. I mean, like talking about last season, last year, watching the tape, I mean, they were so good about getting their depth and knowing what they're doing. But that's what you get with veterans. So that's a good point that you make about, hey, this guy's got to be good with his eye discipline, playing in between those guys, because I mean, if there's one weak link there, I mean, it does make the rest of those guys, take their level down. You're only as good as the guy next to you in a lot of those situations, because a lot of double team blocks, going on the offensive line. You're working with these guys. It's not, one-on-ones happen, but double teams happen a lot too. And you got to get used to double teaming with the guy, get used to the steps they take. How
Mhm.
big of a step does this guy take? So how big of a step do I take, so we don't step on each other and trip? I saw Darnell Wright do a face plant today. I didn't want to tweet it to the Bears fans, but I'm like, man, that looked ugly. And, it's just like, hey, it just takes time to get used to the guy next to you. I couldn't see exactly what happened, but if I'm assuming what happened was Darnell Wright, the Bears' first round pick, right tackle, stepped on the right guard, Nate Davis's foot, or it was Ja'Tyre Carter's
Mhm.
foot, because, they're not used to double teaming together. So that's something that's important. I think Cam Jurgens and Lane and Kelsey, though, they're veterans. They're going to make sure that they take time before or after practice to get all that down.
Sure, sure. And one thing I was told in general was that Cam Jurgens has done a good job of being trustworthy there, which, as we just talked
Yeah.
about, is imperative. If you remember, well, you won't remember, you weren't here, but if our listeners remember, when the Eagles signed Brandon Brooks in like 2000, I want to say 15, I think, 14, I can't even remember anymore. I'm getting old, but he was not the player when they signed him that he became.
Yeah.
Obviously Jeff Stoutland University makes a lot of guys,
Yeah.
they take them from graduates to doctors, right? He transformed
Yep.
his body as well, but it wasn't just the struggles with anxiety that he's been public about, but they were a team that really struggled at times against the stunts, the blitzes, the line games.
Yeah.
That improved as time. They obviously won the Super Bowl in 2016 season. So it improved, but that just goes to show you, like, you can have all the good qualities and you can step in there, but the most important thing you need at that spot is to know who's on your left, who's on your right, and how to communicate, and that you're up to speed. Kelsey and Johnson don't have to get up to speed. Cam
Yeah.
Jurgens has to get up to speed with them. So
Yeah.
that's on him. And I've been told at least in that part of the game, he's been trustworthy. One thing that I know people are from the Eagles are really interested to see is when the preseason starts, when the quote unquote live bullets fly. How
Yeah.
is this sorting when they're kind of coming at him from different
Yeah.
directions? How is his his ability to pass off? Can he and Jason Kelsey, and maybe again, you're probably not going to see it against Baltimore because starters aren't going to play, but
Yeah.
trying to think. Let's see, Indianapolis, and then who's the other game? I can't remember the other game, but the Browns. You kind of want to see how those guys handle a 340 pounder when one of them has to leave to go to the second level. Usually Jason Kelsey, right? Because
Yeah.
that's Dexter Lawrence in a division game for the Giants.
Yeah.
And you got to make
Yeah.
sure that you're okay. Can I leave Cam Jurgens now? He's going to be able to handle this guy. So that all
Yeah.
stuff remains to be seen. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you like. It sounds like you like what you saw there, and things are going
Yeah.
good. And that pretty much wraps it up for the offense. Let's get into defense.
Yeah.
And we have to start at linebacker because obviously things changed when you left.
Yeah.
Davion Taylor got waived. N'Kobe Dean was injured. They were trying Nolan Smith a little bit as just an off-ball linebacker. But then they signed Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham. And, for most teams, as you've seen, Clay, for most teams, when they sign a few guys off the street in training camp, it's called a camp body signing. You got injuries, you're just trying to get through a practice and get through a preseason game. No, Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack are literally being signed to fight to start alongside N'Kobe Dean, which I think is pretty interesting. I don't know what it is about the Eagles, where they did this last year with Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, and those guys came in and
Yeah.
played well. But that kind of, I don't know. I mean, you were there to watch linebackers. What did you see from what they had at the time?
I think that Nicholas Morrow. I mean, he didn't stand out. I mean, I don't know. I think this might be some competition for him. I think it's probably an
Certainly.
ominous sign for him that he's got to pick up his game because hey, they don't see him as a Pentland starter, and he had the opportunity to be that. But these are two veteran guys. I mean, Miles Jack, very very good linebacker for several years in this league. And then obviously Cunningham, he's had 150 tackles in this league. I mean, these guys played for 8 years. These are veteran guys that know their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These guys I would be comfortable with going in to the season. And Nick Morrow he played for the Bears last year. And he had some ups and downs. He's a guy that would make a play here or there, but was never a guy that really jumped out at me. I'll say this, that Jack Sanborn, a rookie undrafted free agent, overshadowed him last year with the Bears. And Sanborn had a heck of a year and he played well, but he was an undrafted rookie free agent from Wisconsin that came in and was the Bears' best linebacker hands down. So Nick Morrow, I think, is a guy that you might want as a backup, a special teams guy. If someone goes down, Nick and Brute, that you'll feel comfortable with him playing some snaps. But I think that from what I saw last year with the Bears, he's not a guy that you would want as your linebacker. And what I always said about that was seeing his struggles was, look at the defensive line he had in front of him. The Bears had the worst defensive line in the league. So I didn't know if that was, maybe just because, hey, look, this guy had nobody holding blockers off of him in Chicago. And that's tough to play like that. But Sanborn did play better and did make a lot more plays in the same, defensive scheme with the same system, with the same guys in front of them. So I don't think a lot of that's transferring over the way that the Eagles wanted to with Nick Morrow, which is why they made these moves.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Now, on our last pod with Adam here, Adam had reported from some of his sources that Miles Jack, there was some concern from other personnel sources about his knees, about whether he still has the knees. Obviously, he was in Pittsburgh, played 15 games, released.
Yeah.
So, and I have some personnel people in Pittsburgh that I know as well, even before the Whitles got there, and I heard the same thing. Really good. Here's what I got from him: really good leader, smart guy, concerned about the body holding up. They felt that the body just did not hold up last year for what they wanted him to do. They think he's tough and physical, but really not the same kind of play. Obviously, you saw they bring in a guy like they had a guy coaching their linebackers last year, and Brian Flores, right? And he was there, but now they're moving on to, I think they drafted Nate Herbig's brother, Nick Herbig, right? Out of he didn't go to Wisconsin though. Where did Nick Herbig go? Did Nick Herbig go to Wisconsin? I forget where Nick Herbig went, but he's with the Steelers now. He's Nate's brother.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making here is, while Miles Jack might be the splashier name, Zach Cunningham is a guy who was a tackling machine.
Oh yeah,
most of his career, and really his only injury concern last year was elbow, and I'm not sure that that's something like you worry about, like chronic, like knee or back. Like he just had weird elbow injuries. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cunningham really emerged here for the Eagles.
Were you shocked that they waived Taylor?
No,
Davian Taylor. No,
only because Clay. The backstory that we've talked about for 4 years now on Inside the Birds is that most of our personnel sources around the league coming out of that draft were surprised that he went in the 3rd round. He was a kid who only played, I think, 2 years of linebacker at Colorado, but he was a coverage linebacker. He was almost like a nickel linebacker who would run, and that's what the Eagles wanted him to be, but he wasn't like an on-the-ball guy. He was not particularly skilled against the run, and he was so raw. He had not played the position the way it has to be played in the NFL. Yeah. So the Eagles picked him in the 3rd round because they basically didn't take a linebacker in the first 2 rounds, and certain people at that time were like, I need a linebacker. And so they drafted a linebacker. But the range that Adam and I got from speaking to people was day 3 guy, priority free agent. So it's not his fault. He's a great kid. Really great kid. And that's unfortunately
just kind of drafted.
Yeah. I mean, it's not fair to him that he was drafted in the 3rd round, overdrafted. Right.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. I'm excited about these new guys, but
Yeah, in general, and I think you make an interesting point about Nick Morrow. He's a light guy, and you never judge a linebacker by how many tackles you had the year before because you don't know those tackles 5, 10 yards downfield.
Yeah.
I do think he can make the team and compete. He might be
Yeah.
someone who helps the team out on special teams because that's where the Eagles struggled last year.
Yeah.
So, but here's what I want to get into with you. I saw in my time there, and I'm wondering if you feel the same. And I think the league is trending this way anyway. I think the Eagles ideally see themselves only having two stack linebackers on the field on first down and maybe a couple of second down short yardage. I think that they're going to be a predominantly sort of three. I want to call it a big nickel slash dime defense. I
Yeah.
think N'Kobe Dean is going to be your one linebacker when it's 2nd and 5 and longer, or 3rd and 5 and longer, and they're going to have 3 corners and 3 safeties, or 4 corners and 2 safeties. Does that make?
Yeah. They're
Is that something that you observed?
And if that's their best players, if that's who their best players are, they're going to find a way to get their best players on the field. If they feel like they got one linebacker, then they're going to play with one solid linebacker and use some of these safeties and cornerbacks that may be outperforming some of these linebackers. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I do think Nolan Smith is a guy that could play a little bit of stack linebacker. He's athletic enough to do it. You can move him from the edge to the stack, and obviously it's going to take a while for him to figure that out, but that could confuse defenses. They see Nolan Smith out there. They think a specific defense, edge rusher situations coming. But
Mm-hmm.
Nolan Smith is going to be able athletically to play stack linebacker. I don't care. I mean, with this guy's traits, he's going to be able to do a lot of that stuff. And only thing to say about Nolan Smith, and from what I've heard from talking to players, really good moves, really good pass rush. He's got to get stronger if he wants to be a big time pass rusher. He's not strong enough yet, but when he keeps putting on that strength, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, we've tried. We talked to we talked to the Eagles fans on this podcast as much as we can, and I sense that there's this sort of, we stole him at 30 overall, and maybe, like you said, maybe he gets stronger and becomes like Micah Parsons because they tested very similarly. Maybe he does. Maybe he's like the next Hassan Reddick, but I think he went at 30 for a reason. Not
Yeah.
just, same thing with N'Kobe Dean. He could very well wind up being a good linebacker, but not the biggest guy in the world. Played on a great defense, sort of a
Yeah.
sideline to sideline, not downhill guy. And they're worried about, the whole, it's kind of like the new Alabama thing. Like you get so much, you get beat up so much at Georgia, you go into the NFL totally healthy. So I do think Nolan Smith will have a really bright future. I
Yeah.
try to pump brakes on people who think he's going to have like 13 sacks as a rookie and just win.
I don't care what rookie
You
you
know,
are. It's hard to make that transition into the NFL. I don't care
yeah.
if you played for Alabama or Georgia and whatever. It's going to be tough. And people are saying that, like talking about Chicago, Darnell Wright. They're like, oh, we're set at tackle. This guy played in the SEC. Yo, I watched him today. He's got a lot of work to do, and he's not playing against trained killers out there in Chicago's defensive line. Okay, so there's a lot of work to be done for these rookies, and it's going to be a consistent, gradual thing. These guys aren't going to come in setting records.
Yeah, no, 100%. And by the way, the irony of us talking about this is that the Bears traded out of 9 with the Eagles so that the
Yeah,
Eagles could take Jalen
yeah,
Carter, and the
yeah.
Bears took Darnell Wright, who, by the way, I really liked. I mean, I got great scouting stuff on
Oh,
Darnell
yeah.
Wright coming out of.
I like
Some
him
people
too.
even
Yeah,
liked him more than Paris Johnson, to be honest with you.
yeah,
We'll
yeah,
we'll have to see how that goes. Why? You watched Jalen Carter. You were impressed.
yeah.
Do you think the Bears were just scared by the off-field stuff? Because there's no team in the NFC or NFL that needs a defensive tackle, I would think, especially for the defense that they run, like a really good 3 technique than the Bears, and yet they did not take him.
Yeah, I think they were scared. They're scared about the off the field stuff, man. That's what kept them out, was the off the field issues. It's the only thing I can think of. I
Mhm.
mean, the guys literally fell. I'm sitting there on draft day. I'm working with NBC Chicago on air, and everybody goes, "It's Carter. He
Mhm.
fell. The Bears got him. Unbelievable." And they say trade to Philip. We go, "Unbelievable." But what was the trade for? Why'd they trade? Was there some other team that trying to trade up and get Carter? Like,
Probably,
what was the
probably.
what was the trade? A fourth round? It didn't change your mind from drafting Carter to
Right.
Darnell Wright. So we were trying to figure that out, and obviously maybe some other team, how he just threw him a fourth rounder. Thank you for giving us Jalen Carter, man. Appreciate it, guys. But
Yeah.
I was shocked. I think everybody, all the beat guys in Chicago, were shocked too. Everybody thought that was Justin Jones. They signed Andrew Billings, but that is a big need in Chicago. But the off the field stuff, man, I think he's in a perfect situation in Philly, though.
Yeah.
Talking about that structure, having those veteran guys. I mean, BG is going to be collecting his 401k pretty soon. He's so dang old. He's still playing. I mean, you got some veteran guys there that'll be able to mentor him. Fletcher Cox, obviously, a bunch of his old Georgia Bulldog guys. So I think this is a perfect situation for him with a bunch of veteran players instead of going to a young and ascending team like Chicago. Would probably be a little bit harder for a guy like Jalen Carter. So I think it worked out well for both teams.
Yeah. All right. Finishing off the front seven. Anything jump out at you? I mean, listen, there's no need to talk about Fletcher Cox and BG, right? And
Yeah.
Hassan Reddick, but
Yeah.
some of the guys battling here for spots, whether it's a rookie Moro Ajomo or Milton Williams, Marlon Tuipulotu, who's in his third year now, trying to make anything that was noteworthy to you.
No, I liked, I watched a little bit of one-on-ones. Like I said, I thought Jalen Carter popped. I like Jordan Davis. I thought they both looked good. They're big, strong guys, but nothing really stood out from the guys that we came to know and love that you just talked about. But I think it's going to be as good of a group as it was last year. I know we lost Javon Hargrave, but I think that this group is going to be special again.
All right, cool. We're going to get to the back end of this Eagles defense before we finish it off. First, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's also pause real quick to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller makes sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you happen to stop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. And hey, tell them Clay Harbor sent you too. You will get a great deal. All right, Clay, back end of this Eagles defense. Now, I brought up the idea that maybe they only want to have one linebacker and get an extra cover guy on the field, but it's not like, the Eagles right now are pulling all pro safeties and corners off the field either, interior corners. So it's sort of like a decision. Do I want to play Miles Jack, Nick Morrow, or say Zach Cunningham next to Dean and be a nickel? Or do I want to take those guys off and get Reed Blankenship on the field or Josh Jobe on the field or somebody else who we got, Sidney Brown, who we drafted in the third round? So there's a lot of names here that are in the mix. Anything jump out to you at the corner and safety spots?
Yeah, obviously, I think we know the top two cornerbacks are set. You got big play Slay, who had an interception in practice. I think that was the first one that Jalen threw all training camp. And Slay is just being Slay. Had some nice coverage. Bradbury, they both look great. I think Reed Blankenship is actually looking pretty solid, man. He's held down that spot. You don't see anything wrong with him. I think he is a solid safety, which is semi surprising because I thought he'd get pushed by some of these other guys maybe for that starting job, but it seems like it's his. Obviously, there's some training camp left to go. There's some preseason games. Terrell Edmonds, I saw some struggles from him, and I think that maybe there's a chance for Kayvon or Sidney Brown to push for that spot, but I feel like that probably would have happened. You would have started seeing some reps for Sidney Brown by then. Brown, struggled a little bit in coverage from what I saw. He got beat a couple times. I think he's more of a box guy, but I want to see what happens with him, once the pads come on. Is he going to be able to play big in the run game and still stick with some of these receivers in the pass game? My only question about Brown, I loved him in the Senior Bowl. I went down to the Senior Bowl in Mobile and was watching. I go, I like this Sidney Brown kid, his brother Chase Brown, running back from Illinois. But I really like him, but in coverage, he wasn't great. I think Kylie Ringo has some growing up to do. He had some ups and downs too. I loved the draft pick, but hey, he's a rookie. He's getting some good reps against some really good wide receivers. So I think he's going to keep getting better and better. But right now, I wouldn't be comfortable with him, say, being a starting corner if an injury happened or something like that. But I loved Avonte Maddox last year in the slot. I thought he always did a good job. So, overall, I think this, defensive backfield is solid. Safety was a stress point for me, but I think that these guys, through the four guys they have, they'll be okay. And I'm hoping that this defensive line will get the pressure that they got last year, which will relieve a lot of pressure off of these safeties. And then obviously the cornerbacks are going to also do a good job and relieve a little bit of pressure off of these safeties.
I want to go back to what you said about Terrell Edmonds. You said you saw him struggle a little bit. Was that in coverage, tackling? I mean, and again,
Coverage.
he's also trying to learn a new defense too.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of
one-on-ones? Yeah.
Okay.
One-on-ones and 7-on-7. I felt like he was getting, picked on a little bit. But I mean, there's some tough matchups out there.
And
Whoever
that's the
goes
book
against,
on him.
Yeah. I mean, there's some tough matchups. Whoever goes against, Goddard is making plays. You just see, okay, man, those Edmonds in coverage. You see AJ Brown, he gets stuck in AJ Brown. That's tough. It's tough matchups, man. So,
right.
I mean, maybe he'll look better against other teams, but I did see him get picked on a few times by Jalen.
Yeah. Anything about Josh Jobe stand out to you? I know he's had a pretty decent camp, but I didn't know if you've been able to take a look at him.
I didn't see much, but talking to some of the guys, people seem to be impressed with him around the NovaCare Complex. Everybody likes what he's been doing. Just hearing from what some of the other guys were saying.
How about post-snap movement there, which is supposed to be a big part of the Fangio concept? Did you see? And I feel like when I've been there, it's been a little bit vanilla, but obviously you're getting into camp more. Were you seeing spinning safeties? Were you seeing formations changing after the snap? Anything of that nature?
Yeah, you saw some movement. They were disguising some coverage. You'd see, maybe a one high, and then they sneak a two in there, and two. Then you sneak some in and some out. But Jalen's getting to the point to where he's pretty good. They'll run a motion. If you see a guy running in motion, if you got a tight end lined up outside, you see a linebacker on him, it's man-to-man. So when you got a quarterback that can take that next step, use motions, okay, there's a guy running with him. There's a cornerback on a tight end. That's zone. They're not matching up the cornerback. You got a guy like Jalen Hurts that knows all this stuff. It's hard to really mess with them, but they were doing a little bit of it. But I feel like Jalen always handled it with some sort of emotion or with some sort of an alignment with the tight end or running back.
Awesome. Clay, great stuff, man. Really appreciate the time. Can't wait to do more work with you this fall season coming up. It's been a pleasure. I know you now you said you're going to see Jacksonville next. That's
next week going to Jacksonville. Yep.
All right. Enjoy your trip. Tell Doug EP we all said hey. And I'm sure Philadelphia is on his mind.
I'll tell him that too. The first time I saw him, I went there to training camp last year, and I wasn't expecting Doug to remember. I haven't seen this guy. So obviously played with Doug. He was our quarterback coach, and he would always say, Clay Haba, how we doing? And I remember I was with Detroit, and I played against the Eagles when he was the head coach. Sees me on the field, first he comes up to me, Clay Haba, how we doing? And that was in 2016. Okay. Last time I saw Doug. Last year, 2022, it's been, 8 years, 6 years. I'm sorry with my math here, but I'm just sitting there watching the press conference. Doug's just scanning around, the head coach with all the media member there. He sees me. He goes, Clay Haba, how we doing? And stops the press conference. Hey, I'm like, hey, man, I'm good. Doug's like, good to see you, man. He's like, you're looking fit. I'm like, thanks, man. I've been working out a little bit. And I got to talk to him afterwards. Came up to me like it hadn't been a day since the last time I saw you. Had to slip that story in there. Doug is still the nicest guy as always. Love Doug. He's a great guy, better coach. Big things from the Jags this year, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, well, we'll get your take on them at some point when you're on with us next on how these Jags are going to be. So, because a lot of people think they will win the NFC South. They certainly have a lot of talent. So,
AFC South. Yeah,
I'm sorry, AFC South. AFC South. That's good. That's about time. That's how I know it's time for me to end the show. Clay, can't thank you enough. You've been great insights. And again, look forward to having you back on with us this fall.
I appreciate that, Geoff. Looking forward to it.
No problem. This has been the latest edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel for Clay Harbor. I'm Geoff Mosher, and both of us thank you, along with Adam Kaplan. We thank you for flying with us inside the Birds.